Hi, I'm Dr. Melissa Magnuson, and this is Lessons Across Species. One of the oldest patients I've ever cared for was a cat named Elvis. Elvis was 25 years old when he passed away. To put that into perspective, when he was 22, I performed thyroid surgery on him. Even standing over him in that surgical suite that day, his age felt almost impossible. He was an outdoor cat who had somehow survived decades of weather, disease, predators, and plain old chance. There were certainly arguments against operating on a cat that age. But when I looked at Elvis, I wasn't looking at a number. I was looking at a cat who was still very much alive. He was still going outside, still hunting, still moving through the world with purpose, still returning home on his own schedule with the confidence that only cats seem to possess. He wasn't a cat enduring his life. He was a cat living it. The surgery went well and he recovered. And for 3 more years, he continued doing exactly what Elvis did. When the end finally came, it was quiet. He curled up outside his home on the cul-de-sac he crossed thousands of times and passed away. No crisis, no prolonged decline. He simply stopped. What has stayed with me all these years isn't the surgery or even his age. It's that for almost all of his 25 years, Elvis remained unmistakably a cat. And I've come to believe that's the thing worth protecting. A few years later, I met a golden retriever named Gilligan. Gilligan lived to be 22 years old, which is extraordinary for a dog of his size. When he was 20, his owner accidentally ran over him after he had fallen asleep beneath his tire. His leg was badly broken, but our surgeon repaired the fracture and Gilligan recovered. He went on to live another 2 years. Pe- People loved telling Gilligan's story because it sounded remarkable. But what made him remarkable wasn't the accident. It wasn't even the recovery. It was the same thing that made Elvis remarkable. He was still recognizably a dog. He still engaged with the world as a dog. He still found joy in being exactly who he was. And that's where I think the conversation about longevity often misses something important. Today, we're entering an era where extending lifespan is becoming a serious scientific goal. In human medicine, there's enormous interest in slowing aging down. People track sleep, monitor biomarkers, optimize diets, and search for ways to extend healthy years for a long time. I understand that appeal. I wear that Aura ring myself. Now, that same mindset is moving into veterinary medicine. Researchers are studying pathways like IGF-1, which appear to influence both size and lifespan in dogs. Projects like the Dog Aging Project are exploring interventions that might help animals remain healthy longer. Other researchers are investigating drugs such as rapamycin and their effects on cellular aging. The science is fascinating, and honestly, I think some of it holds tremendous promise. But it also forces us to confront a question that science alone can't answer. Who is the extra time really for? Most people who wish their pets could live longer are acting from a place of love. I don't question that for a second. The grief of losing an animal is real. Anyone who sat with a family saying goodbye knows exactly how profound that loss can be. But extending lifespan and extending quality of life are not the same thing. A beating heart is not the same thing as a meaningful life. Animals don't experience life through lab values or biomarker reports. They experience it through movement, curiosity, comfort, relationships, play, rest. A cat's life is measured in sunbeams and routines. And a dog's life is measured in walks, games, and the joy of greeting someone they love at the door every day. That's why I've become increasingly interested in the distinction that doesn't always get enough attention. More life is not necessarily more living. If a treatment allows a dog to remain healthy, mobile, engaged, and comfortable for additional years, that's wonderful. That's exactly the kind of progress I want to see. But if we extend existence without preserving vitality, then we need to be more thoughtful. Veterinary medicine has always been guided by welfare, not immortality. And I think that is an important distinction to preserve as longevity science advances. This perspective has changed the way I talk with clients. I find myself asking fewer questions about age and more questions about engagement. Is your dog still interested in the world? Does your cat still seek out the things they've always loved? Are they comfortable? Are they experiencing pleasure more often than distress? Those answers tell me more than a birth date ever could. When I think about healthy longevity, I think about supporting mobility, nutrition, disease prevention, and social connection. And most of all, comfort. I think about helping animals remain themselves for as long as possible because a longer life is only valuable if it remains recognizably life. And ultimately, that's the responsibility we accept when we care for animals. We owe them stewardship. Sometimes stewardship means pursuing treatment. Sometimes it means accepting limits. And sometimes it means recognizing that love is not measured by how fiercely we resist endings, but by how faithfully we protect quality of life while we are here. When people tell me they want their pet to live forever, I don't think that's actually what they mean. What they mean is something far more human. They don't want to come home to the emptiness that follows loss. They don't want to experience grief that's waiting for them. And that's understandable. But it's worth naming honestly. Because when we confuse our suffering with our animal's welfare, we can lose sight of who we're making decisions for. I still think about Elvis more than almost any of my patients I've ever had, not because he lived 25 years, but because right up until the end, he remained completely himself. His, as longevity science continues to evolve, that's the standard I keep returning to. Forever was never really the right word. What we meant was something simpler. Not yet, not today. Just a little more time being exactly this. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to the channel for more lessons from veterinary medicine that apply far beyond the exam room. And if you'd like the deeper written version of this story, you can read this week's Lessons Across Species essay on my Substack.